Greetings. I'm Sunena Maju, student, KMA College of Architecture, and now I'll be presenting my dissertation on the topic The Influence of Urbanization in the Relation of Public Spaces and City, a comparative analysis of evolved public space and urban public space in the city of Ahmedabad, guided by Associate Professor Shebin Johar. Sharon Zukin quoted, "Public spaces are a window into the city's soul." Rightfully said. History have remembered cities, its culture, politics, and essence through their public spaces, as noted from the Greek Agora, Roman Forum, European squares, and Indian chalks. But the 21st century public space planning have raised questions. The need for this research lie in understanding and analyzing the current trends of urban public development and the essence of public spaces India has withheld since ages. The central research question is to determine the functionality and lifespan of a public space in relation to the city, supported by questions raised about quality and behavior of public space in regard to context and the user cultural familiarity. The aim is to clarify the transparency of process that determine these parameters, which also aim in understanding and analyzing of the sub-questions raised. Scope of the research marks in 2 points. 1. The extreme interest in implementing more urban public proposals. 2. Sabarmati Riverfront project, which is analyzed and criticized in this report, is currently considered the model for future urban developments in the country. While the proposals we analyze are relative to different areas of economy, politics, urban layer, history, proposals, etc., and has a diverse categorization, the study will be limited to selected space and understanding of the relation of city to its public space only. Was categorized into three layers of understanding. 1. The changing nature of public space through theories by various authors in a period from 1980s to 2013. 2. The need for a multidimensional public space in the current scenario, as in what calls for an immediate action. Third, and widely, the elaborate study of three authors and their philosophies in regard to public space and city: Aldo Rossi, Kevin Lynch, and Jürgen Habermas. Discussions, research, and reports have dealt with other aspects vastly. The lack of critical analysis of both contradictions to bring together a balance is evident. Therefore, the dissertation intends to decrease this gap by conducting a balanced study of two different contradicting spaces. The methodology has been divided into two phases. One, from June 2019 to January 2019, which was live case study done on the sites of Ahmedabad, and second, dates from February 2020 to May 2020, which was also the lockdown phase, where most research by carried out by already collected data, reports, and journals. Data sources and data types taken are theories, reports, oral history, surveys, observation journals, and news reports as mentioned. Data collection was done as practical and theoretical knowledge. Data reduction and analysis was cross-checking the credibility of oral histories and informal surveys. The data belonged to public sources or else was duly cited and credited. Theories. A conceptual framework was created with independent variables, dependent variables, and locus, which also act as parameters. Form doesn't change over time. It can be either adaptive or rigid. Culture of the space is either representative or participatory. This is where a space becomes a place used or owned by public. Spatial design is how the space accommodates activities and functions in a form. It can be either temporary or permanent. However, India reflects a strong diversity in spatial design, whether it be the streets of Chandni Chowk, Prinsep Ghats, Aarti at Rishikesh, or the Eden Gardens. Sense is the relation a user share with the space, the emotional and physical interaction one has to the place. Time is everything that has made the place what it is now: evolution, planning, adaptiveness, abundance. Built on the banks of Sabarmati by Ahmad Shah, the walled city of Ahmedabad raised to the third fastest growing city as per Forbes magazine 2010 survey, and also the first Indian city to receive UNESCO's World Heritage City status. The city of Ahmedabad has categorized itself into three different urban morphologies: the historic walled city with the poles, the most industrialized eastern banks of Sabarmati with the maximum number of slums in the city, and the new western Ahmedabad. However, the communal impacts and riots have pushed the city to form ghettos, aiding to the layers of the city are street vending and the urban development paradigm of the city. The National Policy on Street Vendors 2019 states that approximately 2% of a city's population is engaged in street vending. However, there are much rules and regulations being put upon the street vending currently. Under Jawaharlal Nehru National Urban Renewal Mission, Ahmedabad was declared as a megacity in 2005, and since the urban planning and urban proposals in the city are rapidly growing. The transformation of public space in Ahmedabad is very evident from the times of stepwells, Kund, the water tanks of Masjid, Kankriya Lake, and the river Sabarmati. However, the relation of the city to water have not ceased to exist yet. Based on the conceptual framework, the primary elements and urban artifacts of Ahmedabad have been categorized as such. That we're looking into is Manik Chowk. Manik Chowk is a small public square of about 2,500 square meter, which lies closer to Teen Darwaza, Badra Square, and as well as inside the walled city of Ahmedabad. The streets of Manikchowk have ever been known for being busy all throughout the day, whether it is the vertical activity that happens in the morning or only the horizontal activity that takes place in the evening. The activity of Manikchowk cuts into layers, and therefore the visual connectivity of the user to the streets and other flows of the space is also visible. The shading and seating are not formal but informally provided. When we talk about the culture of the space is managed and regulated and used by a same group of people. Though the activity pattern varies from morning to evening, the streets stay busy throughout the day. The sense of the place and feeling of safety as experienced by users have thoroughly been analyzed and observed and concludes in a point that the street stays safe and provide a sense of familiarity all throughout the day. The second case study we look into is Sabarmati riverfront development. The form of the river is much rigid and permanently alters the natural flow of the river. Steps as an element have been used throughout the design. Visual connectivity of the user is much biased depending on the point of perception. Shading option for the user is provided only through the embankment walls and the retaining walls built. Properly planned lighting and trains have been provided throughout the promenade and the other points of much importance. Though the river has been an important factor of the city and its nourishment, the space of the riverfront is owned and regulated by the government authorities as well as the riverfront development authorities. The place is mostly imagined to be used for celebrations and summits that glorify the importance of the city. The first proposal for the riverfront development was put forward by Bernard Cohn, which was also called the Sabarmati Eco Valley Proposal of 1960. The observation and analysis of Manikchowk and Sabarmati riverfront development have concluded on understanding the character and the behavior of the city much further. Post the live case study and the comparison of the same to the literature framework, we have arrived at understanding that the dependent variable in the now city of Ahmedabad are environmental feature and symbolism. While we look into the dependent variable, we overlook into a category of waterfront spaces, recreational parks, tourist attractions, and city squares and streets. However, the case studies have been utilized to compare the theoretical knowledge we have from the locus, the evolved public space which is the Manikchok and the urban public space Sabarmati. From the comparison of all these three things, we have arrived at a locus which will work practically on an urban public space project, which looks into planning, design, usage, and socio-cultural impact, which is further. When we look into design, a design can be further divided into enclosure, safety, scope of activity, connectivity, legibility. While we look into socio-cultural aspects, interaction, identity, sense of attachment, behavior, and impact. Planning is a core element when it comes to urban public spaces. Planning can further be divided into density, proximity, circulation, amenities, and diversity. And while we are learning the relation of the city to its public spaces and the users, usage is the important factor. User consideration, accessibility or barrier, diversity, familiarity, and requirement is what makes the usage of the space accurate. While discussing about the different parameters and locus that we follow and compare through the theoretical studies and the practical studies, we also discuss on how public spaces evolve in a city and what are the patterns in which public spaces could evolve. From observing, understanding, and analyzing the theoretical locus of public spaces and how they function in a city, and the parameters that function in a city through live case studies, we are concluding to a few principles that can be theoretically kept in mind while planning an urban public space so as to facilitate the needs of new urbanization as well as the authenticity of the city. 1. The kind of closure provided. 2. Avoid one size fit all concept. 3. Balance of vehicles and pedestrian pathways. 4. Prioritizing interaction over attraction. 5. Urban proposals can consider local bodies or local communities to be regulators for the space. And finally, alteration or refurbishment should be considered as phase 1 and newness should be concluding phase. Thank you.